Let's do that. So, hello, welcome everyone to this this panel. It's by Comic Invasion Berlin. It's a satellite event of the festival, which starts in a couple of days, I think. And everyone here has made comics relating to climate change and environmentalism. So it's the climate comic panel. The subtitle is A Casual Conversation About Climate, Capitalism, Change, and Xenophobia. I'm hosting this panel, and my name is Emily Clervalka. I'm an illustrator and also active with Extinction Rebellion and Parents for Future. And I'm actually accidentally kind of running for the Berlin Abgeordnetenhaus in the next election, in the upcoming election. I think accidental, like many activists, because you just slip into these things and then you need people to get on lists to run for offices. I'm going to introduce you to everyone here. So first off, we have Stephanie Mcmillan. She writes, draws, and makes art in various media to encourage global working class-led revolution to emancipate humanity from colonialism, capitalism, imperialism, to make possible a thriving planet. So I have some of your works here. So this is Mischief in the Forest. This is a children's book, yeah. And Songbird Fly. This slightly more confronting Capitalism Must Die. And this one, Code Green, this has got lots of little things you've made.
Editorial cartoons, yes.
Editorial cartoons, that's the correct term for this. So is there anything you would like to add to your work that I missed out on this?
Oh no, that's great. That's a great summary, thank you.
And Stephanie's actually, she has, you can see in the background, she has a lovely oleander moth there. That's her trying to attract moths. These moths. And we also have Madeline Jubilee Saito. She's an artist and designer from Northern Illinois, living in the Pacific Northwestern United States. She makes experimental contemplative poetry comics about the material world and the sacred. And her book Warmer, a collection of comics about climate change for the fearful and hopeful, you can download online. And she also illustrated the amazing book All We Can Save, which I highly recommend. Is there anything you would like to add to that, Madeline?
I was really inspired by Stephanie's beautiful bio, and I would like to say that my work also, I am hoping, will destroy capitalism and imperialism.
Awesome, that's great.
I need to rewrite my bio now with some more
I always like to
aspire to that.
I like to add the patriarchy to that too, personally.
Yeah, definitely.
Always a good one. We also have Hannah Podek. She was born in 1985 in Hamburg. She's often described as a full-time activist, not least because of the inflationary use of the term activist. She prefers to see herself as an anarchist who is irreconcilable with the system. She was active for several years in Robin Wood and is also involved in today's climate movements. Besides fighting for the climate, she has also been committed to the anti-nuclear movement for 15 years and is also active in the area of anti-militarism. She's the author of the illustrated book Kleine Geschichte der Umweltbewegung, Short History of the Environmental Movement, published by Unrast. Is that all correct, Hannah?
Yeah, it's all correct. It was much longer than the others.
Anything you want to add to that?
Well, maybe only that I'm not sure if I'm right in this group, because I've never illustrated something. I'm very happy that a good friend of mine illustrated this book. You've maybe seen the picture in the beginning on YouTube, because it was the book that it was the the advertisement picture for this talk. Yeah, so I've only written the text. I can't paint, and I'm glad there's people who can. So let's see what we can discuss. I don't know, yeah.
I think you totally belong on this panel. I mean, so I wouldn't worry about that. Great. Yeah, so we also have Lisa Hook. She's an Asian American cartoonist and illustrator Her work has appeared in The Believer and The New Yorker, and has been shortlisted for the National Magazine Award and Cartoon Studio Prize. She is currently working on a graphic memoir about biracial identity, cultural history, and language. You can see her work online. There's a lovely kind of animated, it's beautiful.
Thank you.
Comic graphic work called The Vine and the Fish. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. So I'm going to start and go through and ask you questions. Some questions are for all of you, and some are just to specific people. I want to actually start with you, Madeline, because I tried to read Warmer and I couldn't. I bought it, but it wasn't. I didn't receive a download link. So I know All We Can Save, and I really love that. But could you tell us a little bit about Warmer? And
yeah, sure.
About, and yeah,
that is that's good to know, and I will definitely make sure that you get a download a digital copy. I'm so sorry. So Warmer is actually not all me. Warmer is an anthology of experimental comics about climate that I co-edited and co-created with Andrew White, another cartoonist, in 2017. And yeah, it came from a place of hunger for poetic work about climate. I think we're seeing an amazing growth in, I think, art about climate in general right now, and all the people on this call are definitely examples of that. I think in 2017, something I was really wanting was, I think comics can be an amazing pedagogical tool, or like learning and sort of like teaching, but I also think they have a really great emotional and poetic potential to answer our needs, for processing and for moving through things spiritually. So Warmer was sort of a first attempt at creating a group of things like that. And I will make sure that you get a copy. And it is currently out of print. We ran a group of, we did a short run through Kickstarter, but you can, if you Google Warmer Comics, Andrew White, you can buy a digital copy on Andrew's online store, supposedly, though Emily wasn't able to, so.
Well, maybe I got an email with the download link and it went into it got filtered out or something like that.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. But
please really email me if that happens for anyone else who that's happened to.
Do you have a favorite story in Warmer?
So it's all by different artists. It feels a little tough to choose because I also edited it. Yeah, I think way too hard to choose. Feels a little like saying like which child is my favorite.
Yep. Yeah, I understand that. But is there anything kind of like something that touched you a lot? I don't know, something that stands out to you or something. Yeah, I don't know. To give us an idea about, the vibe of it.
Yeah.
For those who haven't seen it.
I think so it's from a few years ago at this point, 4 years, which feels unimaginably long ago. And I think some of the ways that I think about climate and art about climate has changed since then. But I think something that felt really powerful then, and I think also feels very true with All We Can Save, which is an anthology of writing by women and non-binary people in mostly Americans. I think something about the anthology format can be really helpful when talking about something as like big and overwhelming and also particular as climate. Like, I don't think any one person has access to like the entirety of the way that climate disasters will impact everyone. And so there's something very, I think with something so big and scary, you sort of want to have a lot of people around you sort of working together. At least that's how I felt. That was part of the reason why I wanted it to be an anthology. And I think that's something that I also, felt a lot with All We Can Save.
Yeah, it's really emotional. It feels like the anthology part of it is also about connection and community, and that's part of the solution, I think, to all the problems we have at the moment. And emotional connection to what's happening, which is hard because it's so hurtful. So if I have another question for you about it, do you think, are you planning on a second print edition, or is it just going to be online for now to download?
We don't have any plans for a second print edition right now.
Oh, that's sad.
Sorry. That's how it goes with indie comics. I'm sure everyone here is very familiar.
Carol wrote another question. She said, because I haven't been able to read it yet, but in your work, you often switch between POV perspective and an objective outside one. Is that on purpose, or do you think we need to change our perspective more often?
Wow. I definitely don't feel qualified to make an overall, like, everyone stop writing in the third person. I mean, I think I think talking very personally and emotionally can help us access some of like these feelings and move through some of the necessity of working collectively and sort of do what we're trying to do. And I definitely see that in a lot of, I know Stephanie and Lisa's work as well. But I also think sometimes a sort of a third person using a kind of a voice that echoes a voice I see in a lot of sacred texts that's sort of just like saying like, hey, this is what's happening, I think can also be really helpful. So I think that's how I see moving between those two things, either saying like, I am experiencing this personally and intimately, or sort of shifting and saying like, hey, everyone, this is what is happening. Like, please pay attention. And like, let's all, like, we're going to join together.
Yeah. And do you, your work is very poetic. I mean, I know it from All We Can Save. And when you talked about poetry before, you mentioned it, do you consider your work to be poetry, kind of visual poetry combined with words?
Yeah, I think one of my favorite things about comics is the way that it can be used for lots of different genres. And like, I think something that I was excited about on this call is obviously all of us work in things related to environment and economy and ecology and all that stuff, but we're in very different genres. So yeah, I guess I consider my work to be poetry, but in the medium of comics.
Yeah, cool. Have you always, I mean, so this is also a question for everyone. So your work clearly reflects your politics. Have you always combined your art and politics, or is it, when did you start? Does it automatically flow into your work, or was there a point where you decided to kind of put your politics and your ideas or these opinions into your work? That's open to anyone. Was there
I would love to hear Stephanie's thoughts on this in particular, I think.
Oh, thank you. For me, I always loved art since I was a child. But when I was in high school, I became politically active and put that first. And was convinced actually by other people I worked with. Again, we had an anti-capitalist group. I was convinced by them to focus on political work and stop doing art, which I did for a long time. So I didn't consider them that compatible until actually quite a bit later, when I started drawing editorial cartoons. And that was the perfect mix for me with politics and art. where the whole point was to make a political statement. And yet you're also appealing to people's emotions, and they're trying to resonate visually as well as with words. And it somehow reaches people's brain and heart at the same time, I found. So that's when I decided to, or that's the relationship between the two. They kind of came together with editorial cartoons.
Cool. But you also do like, some of your work is also for kids. Do you have kids actually? No, I decided very young age I wasn't going to have kids. But the two children's books are actually books I've illustrated, and they were written by others. And the Songbird Fly is the most recent, and that was written by my boyfriend, Chris Burns. Yeah, and it rhymes, and it's really cute and great. And he doesn't have kids either, but but we decided to make it into a kid's book. I have kids, and I find that's particularly tough with facing the climate crisis. And you kind of, when I realized what was happening, I went into like a month-long panic attack, basically.
Oh, I can imagine.
And when it was always there as a threat in the background. But then when you look at it, when you look at what's actually happening, you're like, it's really bad. It's terrifying. And but I somehow managed to get past that and kind of just try and enjoy the moment while still trying to change what's happening. What all we have is the now, so we may as well enjoy the now. But do you have? It's difficult for parents to talk to their kids about it. So I'm wondering, when are my kids going to realize? When will they figure it out? Do you have any ideas or suggestions of how to do that, or how parents can, communicate these issues with their kids?
Well, maybe I can answer on that. I am not having children. I'm not in close contact in my daily life with children, but while doing research for this book on history of environmental movement, I talked to many people about their connection to the struggle. And one of the stories I remember most is that a friend of mine who grew up near to Frankfurt was always near to the struggle against the airport expansion, which is one of the most famous struggles in the history of the German environmental movement. Like, besides anti-nuclear fights, there was always this fight against the airport expansion. And when they learned in school about Hebelwirkung, I don't know the English term, physical rules, how to break things, basically.
I'm going to Google it quickly.
They went to the fence, which is made of concrete, so it's a really huge fence. And then while using wood, they destroyed the fence, which was years after the struggle. But there was a teacher near to Frankfurt who strongly believed that it's important to tell the kids that there was this fight against this airport expansion and how to join it. So they went to this fence, and by telling some physical rules how to break heavy things.
Leverage is Hebelwirkung in English.
Okay, yeah. So that's a way to transport knowledge about activism. I really appreciate, because it's something so very normal. That's what I really like about this story. It's not something that was like hidden, that was somehow something you should not talk about. It was just totally clear to go there. And obviously it's a crime. It's definitely forbidden to do it. But if resistance is something that is deeply connected to everyday's life, which we experienced in Wendland region when it comes to anti-nuclear protests, or around Frankfurt, or now in Rhineland area when it comes to coal mining, it is very normal to talk about the knowledge how to fight these companies that destroy our planet. So that's what I really appreciate.
Yeah, I think one way is one thing is to give kids or people the tools to become active or to fight the stuff that's happening. But for me as a parent, there's like this, I look at at books with my kids and I look at the animals, and I know, or I can be fairly certain that a lot of these animals will no longer exist when they grow up. If you watch Finding Nemo, I know coral reefs will be gone in a few decades. It's basically very unlikely that they will still exist, and that's a pain parents go through, and you really, that's something I really struggle with as a parent myself. And it's probably if you look at yourself, you're like, oh, I just deal with the stuff that's happening. And I guess they will eventually deal with the stuff that's happening as well. And
it's important for them to know early, though, what's happening, because kids have the most pure response to it. They're not conditioned yet to filter out the truth. And so then I think they have sometimes the most powerful impulses to act and do something when they see that something's wrong, more than adults do often.
Stefan, you also made a calendar with daily affirmations, which is really beautiful, and it's really positive. And was it difficult to come up with like optimistic stuff and positive messages, or do you consider yourself an optimist in environmental issues?
There's that famous phrase, pessimist of the intellect, optimist of the will, you know, like you have to believe that we can do something and make a difference, because if you don't, then what's life for, you know? But if we go outside, we can see the trees and the animals are living their lives, and so are we. And the only thing that's life affirming is to do what we can to preserve them and to protect them, and the land and the earth. If we give up, then they've already won.
Yeah,
it reminds me of a book we translated. It's called Desert, in English as well as in German, and it's about disillusionment. And one of the main topics is that even if we can't save the world, it's still worth fighting for. So that's something that helped me a lot, because many people start their activism while trying to save all the world, and then they stop completely frustrated and disillusioned when they realize that they won't save all the world, because yeah, obviously we can't save all the world, we won't. But anyway, every single animal we might save, every single tree we might save is an animal that was saved. It's a tree that was saved. Every social center we build, every project we start is something that makes this planet a better place, let's say. So I think for me it was very helpful to get this understanding of the fight being worth being taken, but still not being frustrated if we realize that we won't win this whole fight.
I think there's this really interesting thing where people think this is a story of hope or of doom. So, and that's both of these stories make you not change anything. If you think the story's already written, everything's doomed anyway, then you don't have to do anything because everything's doomed. If you think, oh, we'll sort it out, it's fine, then you don't have to do anything either. What you have to recognize is that this story hasn't been written yet, and we are writing it, and that's the pain you step into to create the change that needs to happen. But you don't know the outcome. You always have to, kind of take that into account. You will not know what's going to happen. And
in a way, we do know the outcome, that is that this planet will one day be destroyed while going into the sun. I mean, if we search for some long-term perspective, there's no sense at all. So the only sense we can ever have is not a sense for eternity, but a sense for now and for the future generations, which does not mean in 500,000 years, but like our kids and their kids.
Definitely. And I mean, here we talked about the floods in New York before we went online. Do you, like in Stephanie, you live in Florida, right?
Right.
And So where do you see the impacts of climate change already there?
Definitely, in many, many ways, and also species disappearing and all that. But I don't know, maybe we should hear from Lisa, because she's impacted very immediately right at this moment in a very strong, intense way. I want to hear a little bit about maybe how that is for you.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think, I mean, having been in, sorry, what was that?
Maybe for people who do not know what's happening in New York, maybe explain what's happening first, what's going on there at the moment.
So I'm currently in New York City, and in the last, I think it was 24 hours or so, sort of the remnants of Ida hit the area, and there was a lot of flooding. There were tornadoes that touched down in New Jersey, and a lot of devastation and destruction and death in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and New York. So it's a very strange thing, because I personally was not, I wasn't caught in a flooding subway station, as some people I know were, or I wasn't out driving and didn't end up in a floating car down the street. And so I feel like there's somehow a metaphor there for an individual experience of larger disasters where, I was inside in my apartment, safe and warm and, very anxious, but I was okay here in my home. And there was a lot of, really bad things happening outside, and a lot of suffering just outside my front door, even if, I wasn't personally experiencing it. I think that sort of that feeling, it's definitely one of dis-ease and confusion, and it is difficult to not just feel kind of despairing a lot of the time, especially having been in New York through COVID-19 as well. I think that sorry, this is a very, very rambly answer. I wanted to just go back to something that I think it was, I can't remember who said it, but somebody was saying, it might've been you, Emily, that thinking just in terms of doom versus hope doesn't really leave a lot of room for action or imagination. And that really resonated with me, because I think that as I have been learning more and more about climate change and catastrophe, the thing that provides me with the most energy is a sense of curiosity rather than hope, rather than trying to cling to a sense of hope or to the idea that everything is totally screwed and there's nothing we can do. And I think that in terms of, the comic that I made, The Vine and the Fish, like that really came out of a sense of curiosity, just wondering about a particular plant, and that leading me onto this whole area of study and learning a lot of things I didn't know about before. So yeah, I was kind of wondering if anyone else had anything to say about the role of curiosity in all of this.
I think an open heart is good, when we approach these kind of horrible existential issues, this isn't a problem that we can just solve. I think Arundhati Royce called it a predicament rather than a problem, that there's no formula that we can come to and say this is going to fix it all, because we're already down the road a little bit, too much to just turn back and make it all the way it was. And how do we approach that from day to day? It has to be, how we decide to live, and a process and an open curiosity, like you're saying, Lisa, just how are we going to face this, and to listen to each other more. I know a lot of people think they have solutions. I know it won't happen through a lot of the people who are in charge who say they have solutions. That's obviously not going to be the path that works. So even when we don't know what to do, just to look for those pathways that we can then go down, getting involved with things that are happening around us, with the people that we meet, figuring out, it doesn't have to be in the arts, there's in every realm of life, there's something you can do.
I think I really like the image. It's in All We Can Say from Catherine Wilkinson, I think. I'm very bad with names. And she comes up with the image of the broken open heart. So what we're witnessing is heartbreaking, but when your heart breaks open, something you can grow out of that. And I really love that image. So we have to look at the world and what's happening within a broken open heart, and then kind of find our path through this catastrophe that we're witnessing.
Yeah, I love that. If I could just, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I think something, Lisa, I love what you and Stephanie said about curiosity. And I think something that I think Tony Cade Bambara said, that the role of the artist is to make the revolution irresistible.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me, curiosity and like this feeling of like attraction to a possible like beautiful good, those feel like such powerful tools. And I think the tools of the people who have caused this, the fossil fuel CEOs who made specific choices to destroy our planet and to do all these things. Like, one of the things that they have worked very hard for is a lack of curiosity, like shutting down curiosity about like what is going on with the impact of fossil fuels. And also I think a sort of sister feeling to that is shame and paralysis. Like I'm sure you all know, like the carbon footprint, that idea was invented by BP as a way to focus our attention on our own personal impact rather than opening in curiosity and rage to the very specific men and the choices they made over the last several hundred years to bring us here. And so I just love like the idea of art that is sparking like curiosity and openness, and as a sort of antidote to despair and shame and avoidance.
I think for me, curiosity is not only a way to explore new ideas for the future and how we can fight in the future, but also my way to understand the past. When I did the research on this book, sorry for focusing on this book so much, but one way was to talk to activists that are much older than I am and to ask about their experiences. And some of the experiences that were most touching for me were very personal stories. For example, one story about people doing a blockade of a construction site of a new street, and then some journalists showed up there, or not even there, but somewhere else. They met somewhere else and made a love story out of it for Bravo magazine. And that was really funny because while then doing this research on the book, I decided to get this old text of Bravo magazine to understand how these stories were told some decades ago. And finally on eBay, I found a person selling this Bravo magazine issue. And I asked her to make a photo of this article. And so I finally got this love story of Bravo, which is called Tom's Geheimer Plan. And
Tom's secret plan.
Yeah, Tom's secret plan. And that's what I really like about history, if it gets the personal story and not some details and years and numbers, but stories.
I'm curious, Hannah, the decision behind making your book a comic, kind of what went into that?
Well, it was not my decision, but the publishing house decision. I've written a book about climate fights before at the same publishing house. And they have like several comics on history of like different topics. There's something about feminism. There's something about art. There's like different left-wing history books, let's say. And I think as my book on climate struggles was focusing on today's movement, but always telling a little bit about the history of the movements. It was kind of a good idea to ask me to do this comic as well. But to be honest, the publishing house would have preferred a real comic, and the result is more an illustrated book, because I personally didn't know how to put the history of a movement into a comic. Like, I could have told stories like some of the stories in detail. I could of course put into some comic style, but all the history I didn't know how to. Maybe that was a lack of creativity, but that's why the result is not really a comic, but more like illustrated. It's like this is like the page with Julia Butterfly Hill on the tree, and then someone else in the tree, and then the media response. We see like the Simpsons squatting a tree. That's how I then in the end tried to solve this problem, that it's not really a comic, but I wanted to tell some stories with combined pictures, and that's the result.
We have a lot of tree squatting going on in Germany. I don't know if you have that in the States as well. There's lots of protests where people build protest camps in the trees. So that's how you protect the forest, basically, by living in it and living in the trees in there. It's really difficult to get you out of there. And does that happen in the US as well, that kind of thing?
In the Pacific Northwest, right, Madeline? That's sort of a thing that happens up there a lot.
I think so. I've been living under a rock a little bit. I feel like Hannah would probably be able to answer this question better than me.
A lot of in the redwood forests in the Pacific Northwest, they do that.
I saw pictures of like these old trees. I think it's Canada being like chopped down. It was just horrible. Just really, this a very old creature. I think hundreds of years old, maybe even 1,000 years old, and then just killed. And you're like, and I think if you grow up in our society, that just seems like a normal thing. But then this is the thing about the emotional connection. I've started to kind of feel that, and that's a new thing for me personally. But I think people in the environmental movement, they've started feeling that, and we've kind of disconnected ourselves from that pain of the death that's happening around us and that we're causing, and we really need to reconnect to that stuff that's happening, because it's not good, and we're basically destroying ourselves. We're hurting ourselves.
I totally agree. I think the emotional aspect is something that artists can really tap into. And I used to do cartoons that were just angry and against the system. And I think that's still an important thing to do, is to expose how the system that we live under, capitalism and class divided society, is at the root of a lot of this. But I also think if you don't have also that emotional connection and the reason for, the love for the world that gives you a reason to want to fight for it, then just being angry, just destroying the evil ones is not enough. You have to have both. But you can't also only have love and not want to fight for them too, so it's got to be a sort of dialectical relationship between destruction, creation, evolution, and getting out of the situation that we're in and into some other kind of way of life that works.
I think that's one of the main reasons for all these forest squattings at the moment in Germany, because it's both. It's both fighting against, for example, the coal mining or the new streets, but at the same time, it's building a community, trying to live together without depending on police, on laws, on prisons, whatever.
That sounds so healthy.
Yeah, but it's really when the forest squats get taken down, it's really terrible. It's really emotional and terrible for the people who are there, because they've built up this whole place and then it gets destroyed. That's also another painful experience that happens there. I have a question. We just talked about this. You mentioned it just now, Stephanie. What do you think the strengths of comics are, like in communicating this whole disaster, or compared to, like, for example, writing or illustration as isolated mediums, what is the specific thing that you think comics can bring to the communicating these issues?
Well, I think that comics are, the unique thing about them is that they're instantly understandable if they're good. They're simple. They get an idea straight into your heart and your mind at the same time with words and pictures. It's a combination. And so I think it resonates with people who maybe aren't that open yet, where somebody may not be ready for a long piece of writing, or they may shut down, pictures on TV or something. But a comic, it's appealing, it's colorful usually, or the simple characters can be very relatable to people. I think it's a way to make the whole issue a little bit less ignorable for those who wish to just kind of turn away, but their eyes just automatically go to the comic, and then it touches you without you wanting, even realizing that you're being connected with. It connects very easily to people, I think.
Do you think it helps to reach out or communicate these issues to maybe people who would not otherwise be confronted with these issues or avoid them?
I do, yeah, especially when you find different venues and try to reach different people who might not have picked it up voluntarily, but they might see it on a Facebook feed that they scroll through, or they might see something pasted on a lamppost or something, a picture word combination. It doesn't even have to be a traditional comic, but a sticker, or something that it might not touch somebody at first or get a response at first, but if you keep seeing that sort of thing over and over. Also, if you are feeling these things and you don't really know where to go with it, it can help you connect into the realization that you're not alone, and that this feeling of despair or upset or questioning things is legitimate and it's common, and we're all with you together on this. If you find ways to reach people like that, it can be very helpful too.
Definitely. I want to get to, because we've only got 10 minutes left, and I kind of also want to talk about Lisa's work, the vine and the fish, and it's kind of, for our viewers, you can see it online. It's beautiful, and it's kind of, you can see the curiosity in it. It's a very poetic. It's a poetic curiosity in this little story, and you kind of explored invasive species like the kudzu. Is that the vine, and also Chinese carp in America, and invasive species are often, seen as invasive species or something very negative, but on the other hand, our environments change all the time. It's nothing. If we bring something somewhere, we're part of nature, so that's how stuff happens. But what you draw a connection between kind of ecosystems and xenophobia, because it was called the Chinese carp, or
the Asian carp.
Yeah. Do you kind of think these kind of issues go together? The other problems we have in the world with kind of, xenophobia, right-wing politics, and the ecosystem problems we're facing. This is a very big question. I'm trying to bring them together. Do you think this kind of stuff goes together often, or is it a really, I don't know. Can you tell us a little bit more about this?
Yeah, sure.
I was very bad at making that formulating that question.
It is a very big question, and I because I don't have a biology or ecology background, I don't feel like I can really speak to the really, really overarching larger points there. But I did think, while I was doing the research for that comic, I did find it very interesting to learn more about the history of conservation in North America and its connections to ideals about white Northern European virility and manliness, and masculinity. And that wasn't something that had really been on my radar before. And so I thought that was very fascinating, because I think, that's like a very, I don't know if there ever has been a time when humans haven't seen their environment or nature as somehow like a reflection or a mirror for whatever's going on within human psychology. But finding these moments where that connection was made very, very obvious were all very fascinating to me. And I think that definitely ties into ideas about purity and, purity of landscape and land, and trying to get back to a pure state. I think that is very easily mapped onto desires for racial purity and those kinds of very racist beliefs. Basically my curiosity led me in many different directions. I couldn't put it all into that one comic, so I really had to pick and choose. But I did find it very interesting also to read about people's reactions to invasive species like kudzu and Asian carp, and just see the amount of fear and anger and hatred that's sort of wrapped up in the language used to talk about invasive species, and also learn more about their history and realize that, at least in the case of that vine and that fish, they were actively brought to North America in order to do very specific jobs that North Americans wanted done. And then, lo and behold, people in charge didn't have all of the different outcomes in mind when they started bringing fish and plants over. So I thought that was really interesting, kind of treating these plants and animals as if they have some ill will and are destroying things out of spite, and that being at odds with the history of why these species are even in this place to begin with. I also found, and this, I think I tried to incorporate this part of the research process in the comic, which is that my personal experience of becoming personally really identified to invasive species that had connections to Asia, East Asia specifically. I went into the research really feeling very resistant to any sort of like negative outcomes to these species' existence in an ecosystem. And like, I kept thinking like, well, how much harm are they really doing? They can't be that destructive. And I found that I was also just approaching the research very, very emotionally. So I just think there's so much, it's like very chicken and the egg. I think that these human biases and discrimination end up showing up in the way people talk about and view the environment as well. And they kind of go back and forth. Then they become a metaphor, and then an environment, like natural metaphors, get mapped onto people, and that's a problem too. So
yeah, it's definitely a problem. I think I see a lot of this is a different type of xenophobia from what you're describing in your research and how we've mapped stuff onto people, but a lot of excuses for not acting that we hear is like, but it's the Chinese, or it's always the others, and it's always someone else's fault, and they're always the other and not yourself, because you're the good ones. We are always the good ones, and that's really, really, whoever we is, that's always a problem.
Right. And in terms of comics and what I think comics can really do well, one would be visual metaphor. So I feel like I really enjoyed playing around with how to visually describe, the us versus them mentality through abstract drawing. And I think for climate in particular, I think I've seen this done very well in some of my friends' comics about climate change. Comics are great for representing scale, which, in a block of text, I think can sometimes get lost because the numbers just get bigger and bigger, and you sort of lose sense of all proportion, but if there's a way to draw it, I think that like visual indication of how big the issue is, or how long into the future or the past, like those scales are can be represented in a really interesting and effective way.
I think you've, Stephanie, you've also tried to visualize kind of capitalism. Can you tell us a little bit about how that works for you? How what's your process, or how do you do that? And what?
Oh, it's so chaotic when you try to pin down something that's so complex, you know. I tried to make a diagram. Well, I did make a diagram, just detailing all the different elements of, you know, from the point of investment to production, externalizing costs and consumption, and going back around with profits feeding back into production again. And I think it helps when I try to do something like that, it helps me understand it a lot first. And then I feel like I can share that understanding. But drawing a diagram or trying to simplify things down into their essence, and it helps, I think, get to the underlying mechanisms of something like an economic system like capitalism. It's got so much about it. It's in every part of our life. But if you boil it down, it's turning the natural world into commodities through the exploitation of labor, and for the purpose of accumulating wealth. I mean, that's what it is. And once you get to that simple essence, you know, then you know what you're fighting against. You know what you're up against. So doing diagrams like that really, I find helpful just to figure things out.
Yeah. There's actually a question from YouTube that Lara posted here, and Hannah also talked about the struggle to visualize to put issues and arguments about the climate crisis into a comic, and to visualize. Oh, sorry, I'll just read it. I'll just read the question. Yeah. Did the other panelists also struggle, like Hannah, to put the issues and arguments about the climate crisis into a comic? How did you simplify the facts without oversimplifying them? That's also an interesting question. How to not oversimplify things. Would anyone like to answer that question?
I can grab that one.
Yeah.
I think maybe something that I would say is, I think something that we get, like a framing that we've gotten from the fossil fuel industry, is that this is a debate, and you better like have the facts, you better have the numbers, and you better be ready to fight against a man who's arguing with you. When in reality, you like, while obviously it's super important to like understand the science, understand the facts, what we really need is to understand our collective power. And actually, I think the place where we are like trying to convince each other or like convince climate deniers, I think is actually a much lower priority, because they're actually people who are straight up climate deniers are a very small group of people proportionally, at least in the US. I don't know the numbers for outside the US as well. But so I think what I would say is that what feels most important is actually like focusing on what exactly is helpful to communicate here, and not getting too caught up in that framing from the fossil fuel industry that this is a debate with like facts and numbers. Though obviously facts and numbers are super helpful, and I really like they are a great thing, but I think sometimes, yeah, we can almost be too caught up in trying to like, you know, win a debate that is not real, when the actual debate is like let's use our collective power to like stop these people from doing this crime, rather than, is the climate really changing?
Yeah, so that's really weird, because we see what's happening, we can see it, we can feel it, and it's really weird that you would debate that. It's a distraction, as you said. I love that kind of that view, that this is the framing the fossil fuel industry gave us, and that we should just, can I say the word fuck that off? Cool. We've reached 9 o'clock, so I should have prepared like a finishing thing, but I haven't, because I didn't think that through. And I'm kind of trying to multitask and read stuff on the little notes and questions. It's really difficult. But you've all been really, really lovely, and it's been really lovely to hear what you have to say. And I think before we close the discussion, if there's any more questions on YouTube, you've got the chance to ask them now. Or if you have any more, if the panelists have anything else they would really like to say that hasn't been said yet, this is the moment where you can say it. I don't have a question, I'm really sorry. I will be better next time. But yeah.
I'd like to say, I just really enjoyed this conversation with all of you and meeting you all. And I think you're a great moderator, Emily. And I think we have to come at this issue from every direction and every angle, and we each have something to offer and to do constructively. And I'm just really glad that y'all are out there doing your things.
I feel the same. Thank you all.
Thank you too. Yeah, it feels really, the moments of community are really the best, because you realize you're not alone. And that's really what we need to do a lot more, I think. Okay. So
there's another question in the chat, which says, how can people get in touch with the panelists about their work? Are there any platforms for activist artists? Maybe we can post some links on the YouTube chat. I don't know, maybe someone in the background and having technical knowledge might do that.
I'm curious, are there platforms for activist artists that I don't know about? Because I'll tell you what, I'm real sick of Facebook and Instagram. They're very bad.
If you start one, let me know. I want to be on.
Well, it's actually, I mean, I think little groups of artists start forming. So for example, in Berlin, there's Claire Bohr. She does really these amazing installations, and she started to form a little group of artists who create work, and she came to that through All We Can Save, which she recommended to me. So I think we can just start building our own communities, to be honest. And then I find, I'm not a panelist and I'm answering this question, I'm really sorry. But I also find, like, if you're active, like for example in XR, there's always artists group, there's always people doing the kind of the art stuff. And if you get, because there's so many communities that are not specifically art-based that are kind of working on these environmental issues. In Germany, we have Fridays for Future, the youth movement. If you can go via that way, via the activism way, or you will find, what I found also really interesting, 2019, I decided to do a calendar which is called Combat Climate Change. And I just wrote to all my illustrator friends and asked them if they wanted to do a page in this calendar on how to, combat climate change. And I thought nobody would answer. And within an hour, I just said yes to everyone who wanted to be part of it. But within an hour, I had 12 people to do one page of the calendar, and I had people on a waiting list. So all you have to do is go out there and, ask and ask, and people are like, they're desperate for it. We're all desperate for it. But I think we're not very, we've all learned that we're individuals and everyone's an enemy, but this is very simplifying things, but that's the society we live in, and we need to build a different one, basically. Does anyone else want to say something about that?
Maybe one last idea about this combination of arts and activism, that there is people really focusing on this combination, like Yes Man in the US or the Pen Collective in Germany, that should be named now, I think, because that's exactly what these collectives are working on, trying to combine creative activism with arts.
Yeah. I think this is a great way to finish the panel, I think. And it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, all of you, and meeting you. It's amazing, really. For me, I think for everyone else.
All of you.
Yeah, let's stay in touch.
Thank you so much, Emily. This is great.
Thank you, Carol. Carol, who organized all of this, who's not here I hope she's watching the YouTube channel. She organized everything, and she got everyone together, and I think she did a wonderful job. Put a lot of work in it. Okay, so Lara, I think I'm going to ask you to end the online thing.
Okay.
Are you there, Lara?
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
I'm there. Yeah. Just say bye, everyone. Bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.